Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Fatal crashes involving drivers under the influence of marijuana have risen sharply since Washington voters legalized recreational pot in 2012. That's according to the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. Police agencies around the Northwest are beefing up officer training to detect people driving stoned. Also, a lab at Washington State University is doing pioneering work to develop a roadside marijuana breathalyzer. Correspondent Tom Bonsi has more.
Let's suppose for just a second that you smoked a couple joints at a party and then got behind the wheel. Watch out for Washington State Patrol Lieutenant Rob Sharp.
The reason I stopped you today is I noticed you weren't able to stay in your lane. Any reason for that?
Sharp says driving behavior, coordination, odors, mannerisms, and physical cues are some of the factors he uses to establish impairment by drugs.
Okay, sir, what I need you to do right now is turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for DUI.
If this were real, the arresting officer may take you in for an hour-long evaluation by a drug recognition expert. You'd seek a warrant to have your blood drawn at a hospital. The blood work to confirm if you were under the influence of marijuana, though, typically takes weeks to come back from the toxicology lab. By chance, Washington State University chemistry professor Herb Hill heard about the challenges of nailing drug-impaired drivers from a colleague at a reception.
And I said, well, why don't we have a breathalyzer for that? And then he says, well, there's none exists. And I said, well, I think we can probably make one.
And ta-da! Well, actually, it's taken years, but the goal is in sight. Hill takes me to his lab, where he and colleagues are developing a handheld device that police officers can use to detect THC in breath. THC is the main psychoactive compound in marijuana.
So this is the new prototype here.
So this is version 2.0?
This is 2.0.
Okay. Hill says preliminary field testing with 30 human subjects this spring established that the device can detect THC in breath. Much more testing is ahead to look at potential variations among gender, race, body types, and chronic users. Hill's team recruits volunteers who buy their own weed and smoke it at their homes and then blow into the prototype.
We had to go through the human testing, the institutional board review, and it took us almost a year to get permission to do this.
How hard was it to find these volunteers?
It wasn't very hard to find the volunteers. We have a waiting list of volunteers to participate.
The human guinea pigs get paid just over minimum wage to smoke their pot. Hill says the portable device to identify drivers under the influence of drugs may look like an alcohol breathalyzer, but works differently inside. His team is modifying existing sniffers used at airports to detect explosives and by the military to alert to the presence of chemical warfare agents. This technology is called ion mobility spectrometry.
In the beginning, at least, this would not be used as evidential information. It would be used as screening information.
The Washington State Patrol's Lieutenant Sharp says he's excited by the prospect of new tools to help him do his job better, but he says the pot breathalyzer must prove itself highly accurate before he'd adopt it.
Even if it's a preliminary device, we still need that level of accuracy and reliability for the trust and confidence. We're talking about people's rights, their liberties and freedoms, and we need to be accurate.
All of which points to it being several years at the earliest before you'd see a roadside breath test to identify stoned drivers. Sharp says a pot breathalyzer might not even be the chosen answer. He says other companies and research teams are working on alternative solutions. Those include cheek swabs or a saliva test, a smartphone-based eye scan, or analyzing sweat on a person's skin. I'm Tom Bonsi reporting.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
To you back live from the PetPain.com studios in suburban Detroit. It is the Full Melt Show. I can tell you I am in no way, shape, or form physically. I should not be doing a radio show today. It just should not be happening. But alas, I've had enough of those days. I can't stand it anymore. I mean, we were this close to not doing a show today just because I couldn't pull it together. Don't ever get shingles yeah. In any event, the news was so strong, it magnetically pulled me to the microphone. It would not let me get away with not doing a show. So much stuff going on. I mean, this idea that the breathalyzer is coming to market, I think, is one of those things that you have to pay attention to. Because if you don't, one of these days you're going to get the tap, tap, tap at the window and ask to blow into a machine you've never seen before. You might think it's just a standard breathalyzer for booze. But the technology that they're intending to employ in these devices, and they're under clinical trial. I mean, this is why they're paying people to smoke their pot and blow into this machine. And he said that they have a waiting list of people that are willing to stand in line to get paid minimum wage to blow their own pot into this machine. They're really not blowing their own pot. They're smoking their own pot and then blowing into this device. The technology that they're employing in this is something that was acquired really from the TSA and their efforts to keep bombs off of planes. So they're using this, sniffer device that's, again, intended mostly for explosives that's being bent and repurposed for detecting minimal amounts of these active ingredients in drugs, so as to say that you are under the influence. And, this is a topic that is wide because you've got different types of drunk driving. It used to be back when I was a kid, drunk driving laws included your civil protections to the extent that in order to be arrested for drunk driving, you must first be submitted to a roadside sobriety test to see if your motor skills are physically impaired, to demonstrate your functionality and your fluidity, how articulate you are with your movement and your ability to control your body. I mean, this is really what comes down to actually putting a test to your ability right there on the site. Now, to some degree, I would favor this kind of thing because it's important that in order to then go further and test your blood, you would have to first fail said roadside sobriety test. And so the angle for police would be to make these sobriety tests as complicated as possible. And I've been reading the stories about this, and there's been numerous stories about this subject recently, because it's been out there in the public. This is the kind of thing that news directors keep in their file. They keep it there looming, and they'll put it like every 3 weeks. They'll go back and they'll check their sources on the subject to see if anything new has happened, because they know that something's about to happen. You might not just be testing positive for marijuana using one of these machines if it ever gets to market. And I believe in one form or another, it's more likely than not that this will at some point reach the marketplace where police are actually using this device, deploying its technology on people in roadside pullovers. And so what I started to say about the various and sundry forms of what you call under the influence driving, DWI is what they call it here in Michigan, driving while under the influence. And so this covers both drugs and alcohol. So it's under the influence of anything. So this could be that you have a prescription for Vicodin, and you've taken too much Vicodin, and you're driving around with the Vicodin, and you're not in control of your skills. And the cop sees that, you're not driving right, pulls you over. And now, just because you have a prescription for Vicodin doesn't mean you're allowed to drive while taking it. It doesn't allow you to impair yourself with a Vicodin and then go driving around, although people do it all the time, I'll just say. Go hang out in the big box pharmacy parking lot one day and just scope out the parking lot. Just hang out in the back corner somewhere and watch the traffic come and go. Go to a place where you can see the people in their cars as they're getting back in their cars. Chances are the people that are after the opiates are going to be as closely located to the front door as they physically can be, because most often they're so anxious to get a hold of those drugs because they're either really out of them because they've probably overtaken them for their medicational needs, simply because in order to, well, at least for what they've been prescribed, because the doctor can only prescribe you a certain amount, and then you become tolerant to that amount, and the pain overcomes this tolerance, and now you need more, and the doctor's not going to give you any more. So you end up taking more. You run out before your prescription date ends, and you're just anxious. Now you're dope sick is basically what you are, and they're standing there waiting for their prescriptions to come online so that they can race into the pharmacy and get them. Now, chances are if they've run out of medication, they're either been buying these prescription drugs on the street, or they've turned to something else like heroin just to maintain until they can get their prescription back. Now, if they've gone and turned to heroin, chances are at this point they don't even care about the Vicodin anymore. The Vicodin is just a bridge to heroin now. If I can't find heroin, I'll use the Vicodin until I can find the heroin. It'll keep me from getting sick. So all I'm saying is when you go to these big box pharmacies and sit outside and scope. I've done it a number of times, just going there to get my own stuff. I'll sit around and see what's going on. Just be observant. And you'll see people coming out of the pharmacy with their opiates in hand, getting into that driver's seat, and either racing off because they're going to go sell them immediately for heroin, or they're taking them by the handfuls. Probably both. They'll take them by the handfuls to overcome their dope sickness while they're racing off to off them on the streets so that they can turn around and go to the heroin dealer and get a much larger supply that's cheaper. Because, again, the doctors aren't going to give them the pain medication needed to keep them, A, from being sick, or B, from being in pain. So just sit outside and watch what's going on. There's nobody... The police aren't hanging out in the prescription drug parking lots waiting for people to do this. They're not. You'll find them hanging outside the bar. You'll find them hanging outside there. They'll be pulled off into a little space just outside of a bar where everybody has to go through, and then they'll see somebody pulling out that's been sitting in the bar parking lot for a while, and then they'll pull them over simply because they were there and there for a while. Chances are you're probably drinking. That's my probable cause. I witnessed you sitting in the parking lot at this alcohol establishment for a considerable period of time. It gives me rise and suspicion to believe that you may be drunk and that you may not be able to operate that vehicle. It used to be you'd have to get out and do that sobriety test and then maybe go for blood testing or something like that. Used to be. Now it's a nanogram limit in many places for alcohol, and they're trying to do this for drugs as well, especially marijuana. But watch out. These guys on the marketplace that are trying to release this device, they've got a lot of investment money into it. There's a lot of media speculation going on. The police are wringing their hands, and chances are you're going to see that bastard outside your driver's window.
You're getting the full melt.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
It's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
Got something to hide? Canalock offers discreet and effective storage solutions that destroy odor, so nobody knows. Canalock is a patented charcoal-activated bag that discreetly stores your marijuana. Canalock is made from the same material as military chemical warfare suits. Get yours at canalock.com. Visit canalock.com to learn more about no-smell technology.
Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Dordt Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570. It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Radio show.
The girl in the pastry shop with the net in her hair is making a cannoli for you to take on your hiking trip in the woods with your bros that you've known since second grade and you make.
So if you want to make a phone call, you got a comment, a question, you want to really get something off your chest, you got some pot issue that you just can't keep inside anymore, we have a toll-free number you can just spill your guts right now. 844-420-TALK. That's 844-420-8255. I'll tell you what, if you're hungry because you've been smoking your weed and you're running for the border, okay, I'm just trying to make a transition. It's not working. There's a guy that is suing the Border Patrol. I think I titled this on Facebook. How did I title this? Border Patrol gets bell rung. I think that's what I said. He's suing the Border Patrol to carry his medical marijuana. The story, according to the icsun-news.com, that's the La Cruces News Sun. Dateline, La Cruces, a Deming man is suing the U.S. Border Patrol, alleging agents are failing to adhere to a new rule that allows him to carry medical marijuana without risking federal charges. What, you say? There's a new rule that might allow you to carry your medical marijuana without risking federal charges? Well, I don't know, continue. Raimundo Marufo, I'm not kidding, who participates in New Mexico's medical marijuana program, filed the lawsuit Monday in federal court seeking an injunction against the U.S. Border Patrol in connection with questions the agency poses to travelers at border checkpoints. Marufo's attorney, Jason Flores-Williams, writes that Marufo must routinely travel from Deming to La Cruces to obtain medical cannabis, which requires passing through a U.S. Border Patrol checkpoint on Interstate 10 on his return trip. Federal agents ask him whether he has any illegal drugs. Oh, now that's a problem, isn't it? Wait a minute, I shall, again, continue. There's a word I'm looking for. It's escaping me. I hate it when that happens. I'm rarely short of words, I tell you. The dilemma is this. Marijuana is still a controlled substance under federal law. If Marufo, I'm just quoting the article now, and the individual involved here, the lawyer. If Marufo answers yes, he's a drug smuggler subject to felony indictment, the court complaint states. But if Marufo answers no, he could be guilty of lying to a federal agent, according to court records. So I can see why he's suing for relief. Because the direct question is a loaded, pregnant question, isn't it? The only way, and I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you the answer to this question, the only way to avoid that officer's question is to avoid it. Zip your lips. Not going to answer your questions, officer. That is how you would have to answer that question in order to, it's the only answer to that question without ending up a criminal. And so what they're saying is there needs to be something other than your right to remain silent that you can give to officers that allows you to walk away with your marijuana in hand. And I imagine that's a question, isn't it? How much marijuana? What if your state allows 2.5 ounces and the federal government's like, well, they can only have an ounce if it's really medical. They don't need 2.5 ounces, do they? They're traveling. I would make great argument against that, but I'll digress on to the original argument, which is, what can I tell federal agents? It's not my argument. It's really the argument of the court filing, of the lawsuit. This is the type of lawsuit that seeks relief in the form of an opinion, a binding court opinion. It's what you call declaratory relief. You're looking for the judge to declare you correct and offer you the relief of that declaration. Flores Williams contends Marufo's future is at risk every time he passes through a Border Patrol checkpoint with his medical marijuana. A federal drug distribution charge could result in up to 7 years in prison, along with other penalties like a person's car being confiscated. He doesn't know if his life, for all intents and purposes, is going to end that day, Flores Williams said in an interview Tuesday. Marufo's complaint contends that a federal provision called the Rohrabacher Amendment, we all know what that is, do you know the Rohrabacher Amendment? Look it up. Contained in a 2015 Appropriations Act, makes it illegal for the U.S. Department of Justice to enforce laws that interfere with state statutes that allow the, quote, use, distribution, possession, or cultivation of medical marijuana, end quote. Whether it's a sense of entitlement, indifference, or simply ignorance of the law, the court must immediately issue an injunction enjoining the United States Border Patrol from asking questions and conducting searches that violate the Rohrabacher Amendment, the complaint states. The Border Patrol didn't respond to a request for comment Tuesday. New Mexico's medical marijuana statute, known as the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, took effect in July of 2007. See, that's a year before Michigan did. It's a little over a year, allowing medical marijuana patients with certain qualifying conditions to use cannabis. Marufo has post-traumatic stress disorder, a qualifying condition according to court documents. State Representative Bill McCamley, I guess it's McCamley, from Las Cruces, he's a Democrat, last year asked the U.S. Attorney's Office in Albuquerque about the department's policy for enforcing federal drug laws in connection with state medical marijuana patients traveling through Border Patrol checkpoints. U.S. Attorney Damon P. Martinez responded to McCamley, good Lord, I can't say it, in a July 2014 letter saying his office adhered to guidelines in a 2013 document from the Department of Justice known as the Cole Memo in deciding which cases to prosecute. The guidelines include preventing, quote, drugged driving, end quote, and preventing, quote, state-authorized marijuana activity from being used as a cover or pretext for the trafficking of other illegal drugs or other illegal activity, end quote. He wrote that his office has not prosecuted medical marijuana patients found in possession of small amounts of marijuana at border checkpoints. I'm sure they were still arrested. I'm sure they were still threatened. I'm sure they were still asked to roll on their friends. I'm sure they still probably confiscated their property and at least their marijuana. Because they can. And they will. This is not according to the article. I have no substantiation of that claim. I'm just making a surmise. Martinez noted, however, that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection under which the Border Patrol is organized is really part of the larger U.S. Department of Homeland Security, not the Department of Justice, so the Cole Memo doesn't apply. Oh, you're going to wiggle around that way, are you? I see, because the DOJ really isn't responsible for the Homeland Security Department, so because the DOJ memo is internal, and it's really about the enforcement of laws, has nothing to do with Homeland Security. Homeland Security can make their own rules. They have to issue their own memo, so would indicate Martinez's reply. Certain agencies, including the CBP, require that officers seize any marijuana they come across while acting in the scope of their official duties because federal criminal statutes prohibit the possession of marijuana regardless of quantity, Martinez's letter states. Some medical marijuana patients have reported having their medical supplies seized by agents when passing through checkpoints. McCamley says that it appears to be hit and miss depending on the federal personnel on duty. See, it's all subjective, isn't it? You know, tomato, today I get hit, tomorrow I'm fine. But he says the possibility for federal agents to seize a patient's medical marijuana remains, even though federal prosecutors have said they won't prosecute medical cannabis cases. See, they don't give a shit about you. They don't care that the whole intention of this is to respect and recognize the state's medical marijuana authority in deciding not to take your medicine. They won't recognize that because they're going to say, look, it doesn't matter. We were not going to prosecute you, but it doesn't say we can't take your dope. Now you got to go get some more, you little sick bastard. That's what they're saying, isn't it? There are federal checkpoints on Interstate 10 between Las Cruces and Deming, on Interstate 25 and New Mexico Highway 185 between Las Cruces and Hatch, and also on U.S. Highway 70 between Las Cruces and Amelgarado. Asked to respond to the argument that Border Patrol isn't subject to the same guidelines as the U.S. Department of Justice, Flores Williams said the two entities are dependent upon one another, and they are. He's quoting now as saying, the police do what they do and the Border Patrol agents do what they do as the first step in a chain of events that ends up with the prosecutors doing what they do, he said. Without police and Border Patrol agents, there are no prosecutors, and without prosecutors, there are no Border Patrol agents. So the funds are intertwined between the two, and that's an absurdity to try and make that argument. Though about 24 states have medicinal marijuana programs and a few more have legalized recreational marijuana, it's only residents who live in an international border zone with federal checkpoints who must worry about a run-in with federal agents when traveling within their state-authorized cannabis, McCamley said. And I can tell you, as a guy who's in the Detroit area, that that's absolutely true. Look, just because they're Border Patrol agents doesn't mean that they're only occupying the border. They're clearly not. Border Patrol agents have vast and wide authority to investigate anything that is considered criminal that occurred at or around the border. And so they can go into states and conduct search warrants and do all kinds of stuff deep inside of these state territories surrounding the borders. Obviously, they can't go into Mexico or Canada, but they clearly have authorization to be just like any other policing agency deep inside the borders of these bordering states. Michigan is one of them. You can drive around Detroit and find customs border guys all over the place. And they seem to be present to help support local police in many cases. I've watched it happen a lot. You're not going to be subjected to this if you're, say, in Ohio. You're not, because you're not bordering with Canada. You're going to be subjected if you're in Michigan, or if you're in Wisconsin, or if you're in North Dakota, or, Washington State. I mean, these are the kinds of places, any place along the southern border, these are the places where you're going to run into these agents and have an issue with your medical cannabis. So clarity is being sought. Flores Williams said the lawsuit isn't meant to be antagonistic towards Border Patrol, which wants to do its job, but he said his client and others in similar situations need for the law to be clarified. This is what the courts are for. He said, when there is a confusion about the law and citizens require clarity about the law, then this is when judges have to do their job and review the law, review the arguments, and bring us back to a resolution so people can conduct their lives according to the law, right? Flores Williams said the case is likely to be taken up in federal court in La Cruces. He's sought a hearing on the matter, but it's up to a judge as to whether that will be granted. Well, la-dee-da. I mean, what are you going to do if you're in one of these border states and run across a Border Patrol agent? Don't lie to him. I mean, yeah, he's probably maybe not going to arrest you for your medical marijuana if you've got a state card and you're there with a small amount, and maybe you're probably not intoxicated or driving behind the wheel at least. He might just take your marijuana and let you go on your way. But not if you've told him, no, I don't have any illegal drugs, and then he finds them. Now he's going to arrest you. You know what he's going to arrest you for? Lying to a federal agent. It doesn't matter that you were afraid. It doesn't matter that he wasn't going to arrest you. Just take your weed. It matters that you lied, and he proved it. He did it with prima facie evidence right there in front of you, probably on camera. It's an open and shut case in court. You're going to get Martha Stewarted for that. That's a 6-month stint in the federal pen is what that is. I mean, that's what it is. So you're going to have to, I'm so glad that these challenges are finally being made. We had to do this in Michigan with our own act. I have to do this because it's just too warm in here all of a sudden. You get me all excited, I get all hot under the collar. Then I got to disrobe. It's a good thing I'm on the radio. So, you run into a Border Patrol agent. He asks you if you've got any illegal drugs in the car. First off, it's not out of line, out of character to ask, because you might be confused. You might not even know you're talking to a Border Patrol agent. All you know is that there's a guy shining a glaring flashlight in his window. His object is to blind you and see what you're doing while you can't see what he's doing. It's to his strategic advantage.
Maybe that's how he spotted your medical weed. Got anything illegal in the car? No. What's the weed there doing on the thing? Isn't that marijuana? Why don't you get out of the car, sir? Now he's got you on the weed and on lying to a federal agent. Now you're going to suffer 2 charges. You're certainly not going home that night. You're going to be arrested and hauled off to the pokey. The answer to the first question he poses might be, I'm sorry, officer, could you please identify yourself fully? This is a legitimate request. I'm Sergeant John Smith from the Detroit Police Department. Now, can I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, please? Or do you have any illegal drugs in the car? He's got to identify himself. Look, I can't see who you are. I'm blinded. I can't see your badge or your uniform. Can you please fully identify yourself? Which department are you with and what's your name? He's going to tell you. He might be obstinate and try and ask you your questions first. It's a legitimate question to ask the officer to identify himself. And then once you've figured out that he is Border Patrol, if he is, the answer, if he presses you further for the marijuana question and you've got some in the car, is officer, I'm not going to answer your questions further. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights to not incriminate myself. The right answer is silence. You are not required to respond. But if they trick you into lying, they're going to take you to court and prosecute you. Maybe use it as leverage because it's the federal pen for 6 months is what it is. It's just basically a dorm. It is Martha Stewart prison. I mean, it's not like you got you in chains and shackles. You're all walking around freely in an open area. These are all nonviolent people that did the same thing to you, lied to the cops. But a lot of people don't want to look at that mandatory thing there because that's what they're going to do. They're not going to give you federal probation. They're going to make a point out of you and send you off to the pokey for 6 months. And they might use this even if they're not going to, even if the guidelines don't allow for it. They're going to threaten you with that in hopes that they can use that little ticket to get you to plead guilty to something else. Another big mistake. When are you people going to stand up for your rights and enforce them? I'll tell you what. I'll give you a little bit of inspiration. Got a couple of stories here today, and we'll come back after the break and talk about them. How people are fighting back, and it's working. There's a story today out of Colorado talking about how prosecutors there are lamenting over the idea that they can't get any DUI convictions. They've got a per se limit, and they can't get a DUI conviction on marijuana cases because the populace there is so educated and staunchly positioned about this that they refuse to get a conviction even when they're guilty of violating that law. That and another story along the same lines coming up next on the Full Melt Show. Don't go away.
You're getting the Full Melt.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release. We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that as traders we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
At book club, they were asking me what you're doing now, Janice.
Blogging. Your blog is just pictures of you in a mirror.
It's called a fashion blog, Todd. Well, I've been helping people save money with Progressive's discounts. Flo, can you get Janice a job?
You should have stuck to softball. I was so much better at softball than Janice did.
Where's your wife, Todd?
Vacation.
Discounts like homeowners, multi-policy. I got a discount on this ham.
I've got the meat sweats. It's good ham, Diane.
Paperless discounts. Give it a rest, Flo.
Yeah, Flo, give it a rest.
We ask people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the Allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
Man, it's always when I'm trying to find these stories during the break, and I'm like, oh, where's that damn story at? Where's it at? Oh, I'll find it. Let me tell you, I'll find it. I'll just review some of the top stories today. Chronic pain in Minnesota being expanded into their medical marijuana program. I told you about the Border Patrol being sued by this guy down in La Cruces. In Alaska, it's coming down. We don't want outside big box investors coming into our retail cannabis businesses. The Canadian judge fines a man $1.30 for growing 30 marijuana plants, calls the laws obsolete and ridiculous. That's what I'm talking about. Get the judges on board. Illinois medical marijuana patients jumping. Now that there's 3,600 medical marijuana patients, that's an increase of 300 patients just this last couple of months, this last month, I believe. And it's only because they have cannabis on the shelves in some stores now. It is not cheap. But it is legal. New study finding that state crime labs are paid per conviction. Let's just look at that for a second, because I believe this is a short story, and then I'll have to look up the other story because I'm not seeing it in the ones that I posted earlier today. This is according to the Huffington Post, and was dated. Oh, good Lord! Is this dated? Is this dated that long ago? Oh, see, it is dated a long time ago. I've been hoodwinked by the Huffington Post posts. The study is finding, and this is dated from a couple of years ago, in fact. The study finding that state crime labs are paid per conviction. This is an interesting story. I pre-read it. Let me just give you a glimpse of it, because it is true. And unless you understand details and facts like this and what this means to the credibility of court proceedings, where they're supposed to be the triers of fact, they're supposed to be seeking the truth here. Our system has been so corrupted by politicians and by lawyers and by courts, judges, again, politicians, sheriff's department people, politicians, that they've twisted their methodology by which they're being paid for the infrastructure to support the prohibition of cannabis into actually making the industry itself pay for it. He said he's recently written about the cognitive bias problem in state crime labs. This is the bias that can creep into the work of crime lab analysts when they report to, say, a state police agency or the state attorney general. If they're considered part of the state's, quote, team, if performance reviews and job assessments are done by police or prosecutors, even the most honest and conscientious of analysts are at risk of a cognitive bias. Hence, the countless and continuing crime lab scandals we've seen over the last couple of decades, and this, of course, doesn't even touch on the more blatant examples of outright corruption. In a new paper for the journal Criminal Justice Ethics, Roger Copel and Megan Sachs look at how the criminal justice system actually incentivizes wrongful convictions. In their section on state crime labs, they discover some astonishing new information about how many of these labs are funded. Funding of crime labs through court-assessed fees creates another channel for bias to enter crime lab analyses. Good Lord. In jurisdictions with this practice, the crime lab receives a sum of money for each conviction of a given type. Ray Wickenheiser says collection of court costs is the only stable source of funding for the academia. This is another one of these strange. What it is, it's two area agencies with one crime lab. So the two agencies combined their names into one name. It's the Acadiana Crime Lab. Acadiana. It's like got to be Indiana and Arcadia. Who knows? $10 is received for each guilty plea or verdict from each speeding ticket, and $50 from each DWI ticket and drug offense. In Broward County, Florida, monies deposited in the trust fund are principally court costs assessed upon conviction for driving or boating under the influence, $50, or selling, manufacturing, delivery, or possession of a controlled substance, $100. Several state statutory schemes require defendants to pay crime laboratory fees upon conviction. North Carolina general statutes require for the services of the state or local crime lab, the judges in criminal cases assess a $600 fee to be charged, quote, upon conviction, end quote, and to be remitted to the state law enforcement agency containing the lab wherever that lab, quote, performed DNA analysis of the crime, tests of bodily fluids of the defendant for the presence of alcohol or controlled substances, or analysis of any controlled substance possessed by the defendant or the defendant's agent. $600 court cost there. You see what's going on? You might be going, well, what's wrong with that? Hey, they got convicted. They should pay the price for us having to do the conviction, right? No. You got it all wrong. The state's burden to pay for the costs of convicting defendants is borne by the state. It should not ever be borne by the defendant. I don't care if you did convict him. Maybe it's a wrongful conviction. This isn't a civil case. This is a criminal case. In a civil case, you might ask for court costs when you sue somebody. Because, okay, you took me to court. You knew that what you were claiming wasn't true. I proved that what you were claiming wasn't true. But it cost me $15,000 in attorney fees and court costs to defend myself. And since your lawsuit was frivolous, you've just damaged me. Now I'm suing you, countersuing you for the cost of defending myself. That's a civil case. You really don't have this kind of jurisdiction to make these kinds of requests in criminal cases. But the state, since the prosecutor can't really say, hey, can we get the defendant to pay for these fees because it costs the state to do this? No. In the first place, if you're the state and you're going to make the accusation, the cost should be borne by you. It's an incentive for you to limit the number of cases you bring and to make them truthful. But if you just look at this and say, oh, well, you're all wrong, Steve, come on. These guys are criminals. We've convicted them. They did the crime. Now they're going to do the time, but there's nothing to say about pay the price for conviction. There's nothing in there that says this. And let me tell you why, as this analysis goes on, why this is bad for the conviction rates. So Illinois crime labs receive fees upon convictions for sex offenses, controlled substance offenses, and those involving driving under the influence. Mississippi crime labs require crime laboratory fees for various conviction types, including arson, aiding suicide, and driving while intoxicated. Similar provisions existing all over the place in Alabama, New Mexico, Kentucky, New Jersey, Virginia, and until recently in Michigan. Other states have broadened the scope even further. Washington statutes requiring a $100 crime lab fee for any conviction that involves lab analysis. Kansas statutes requiring offenders to, quote, pay a separate court cost of $400 for every individual offenses if forensic science or laboratory services or forensic computer examination services are provided in connection with the investigation. Maybe they didn't even convict you. They just investigated you. You got to pay for it. In addition to those already listed, the following states also require crime lab fees in connection with various conviction types: Arizona, California, Missouri, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Think about how these fee structures play out in the day-to-day work of these labs. Every analyst knows that a test result implicating a suspect will result in a fee paid to the lab. Every result that clears a suspect means no fee. They're literally being paid to provide the analysis to win convictions. Their findings are then presented to juries as the careful, meticulous work of an objective scientist. Is this that? If you know, any regular normal business, because this is a government entity, if you know that your funding as a business is dependent upon you indicating that a suspect is guilty, aren't you going to put forth those analyses? Doesn't it at least make your legitimate analysis suspect? I said this in the Facebook post when I posted this article, and it's this. If you're a scientist, you're held to a higher standard of proof and duty. If you're a police officer, you're also held to a higher standard and duty. And just like the fox guarding the hen houses with police and their internal affairs divisions, because there is no such thing as internal affairs, what you've got is a department that is complicit in just saying we didn't do it. It's not our fault. That's what internal affairs is. It's the department of we didn't do it. Hang on, this cop shot somebody. He was running away. All the witnesses said so, and a couple of our own cop friends say so. Well, let's turn it over to internal affairs. Internal affairs. Did this cop shoot somebody? Yes. Are they dead? Yes. Is it his fault? No. This is the department of we didn't do it. Just like that, you've got these other guys held to a higher standard from two different fields of expertise. And when you sum up those higher standards, they're bigger as a sum than their own individual duties. They're completely blown out of the water by this incentivized reporting. Because you don't get paid if you don't report a negative result. If you report a negative result, you're not getting paid for the test. That means you've got some costs and some personnel expenses, some overhead that is going to eat into your budget. That's not being recouped. So you've got two choices. You can either A, not perform those tests. It's not an option. The test has been sent to the lab. There's a duty to perform the test. The other option is to report the truth. And are you reporting the truth? We don't know because we can't see through the obscurity of your lack of professional ethics. You should have stood up as police in the crime lab and demanded that these very politicians that were funding your methods for producing results in a crime lab be scientifically funded through taxes by everyday ordinary citizens. But I'll tell you that the guys at the legislative booths don't hear that. La, 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 see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Because if we do what you're suggesting, we have to reveal to people the true costs associated with providing law enforcement personnel with the equipment and monies necessary to run and fund their departments. And it is astronomical. You don't want to see those figures. You don't want to know that's coming out of your pocket, and you're not going to vote for that guy because he wants to raise your taxes to pay for him. That's why it's not being done. And instead, you're seeing everyday ordinary citizens be subjected to these questionable tests, be wrung through the legal system, and hung out to dry on your dime. Think about it. Jeez.
You're getting the full melt.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road, take care when passing, and always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
Imagine a world where patients can use marijuana like any other medicine. The Marijuana Patients Organization challenges the status quo by helping our neighbors to enjoy a better quality of life. Visit the MPO at marijuanapatients.org and enjoy informative articles, engaging debates, and information about treatments, doctors, and dispensaries in your area. Over 50,000 people have registered at marijuanapatients.org since 2010. Join us at the Marijuana Patients Organization today, marijuanapatients.org.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 571.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show.
All right, I'm going to give you this story, the contents of this story, and then I'm hoping I have enough time to play this marijuana legalization commercial. It was debuted today. Colorado prosecutors complaining they have to provide DUID to prove DUID defendants were actually impaired. Is this what I'm looking for? Wait a minute. Is this the story? I don't even know this is the story I'm looking for. I thought it was. I don't know. I'm going to read you the story anyways. This is out of Forbes at Forbes.com. I-502, the ballot initiative that legalized marijuana in Washington, created a per se rule for drug driving that deems anyone with a THC level of 5 nanograms or more per milliliter of blood to be impaired, or even if he isn't. Amendment 64, Colorado's legalization initiative, wisely eschewed such a definition, which has little scientific basis and unfairly treats unimpaired drivers as public menaces. In 2013, Colorado's legislature nevertheless adopted a slightly more liberal version of the per se law, Washington's rule, creating a rebuttable presumption that the motorists who meet or exceed the 5 nanogram threshold are guilty of driving under the influence. That means you can present evidence that shows that you weren't driving under the influence, that you weren't, say, impaired. You can rebut it. The burden of proof is on you. It looks like that the twist on the per se standard is making an important difference in some cases. KCNC, the CBS station in Denver, reports that prosecutors around Colorado say they're concerned after more and more arrests for driving under the influence of marijuana are not leading to convictions when they go to trial. The problem from the prosecutor's perspective is that Colorado's laws allow but do not require a conviction in DUI cases where the driver's blood contains 5 or per this is incorrect. The 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter. Unlike in Washington, such test results are not the end of the story. Jurors may still consider evidence indicating that the driver was not actually impaired. Last June, for example, a medical marijuana patient named Melanie Breiniger was pulled over for an expired registration in Westminster. Although there was no evidence of erratic driving, Breiniger admitted she had smoked marijuana that morning, and she performed poorly on roadside sobriety tests. Her THC blood level was almost 4 times the 5 nanogram threshold, yet a jury acquitted her after she argued that she was not stoned behind the wheel. Here's her quote: "When I smoke, I don't get high," she said. This is what she testified. That may sound implausible, but patients who regularly use marijuana for relief of symptoms are able to drive completely at THC levels, or rather competently, at THC levels that would impair an occasional consumer because they have developed tolerance to marijuana's psychoactive effects and or have learned to compensate for them. As for the roadside test that supposedly showed Breiniger was impaired, KCNC reports that jurors tried doing roadside maneuvers on their own, and some completely sober jurors failed. In other words, they went outside and started doing the roadside sobriety test. And they found that when they held their foot up in the air off the ground with their head tipped back and their eyes closed, that they couldn't do it for 30 seconds without stabilizing themselves. This would be a fail on the roadside sobriety test, and these jurors were completely sober. So they used their own skills. This is what a jury's intended to do. I love Colorado for this reason, because jurors really put themselves to task rather than just biting and swallowing whatever the prosecutor and judge feed them in their effort to feed the machine. Jury foreman Brad Wood noted that he and his fellow jurors were following the letter of the law and finding Breiniger not guilty. The law the law allows you to infer that the person was impaired if they have over 5 nanograms per milliliter as a limit, he said. But you may also feel free not to infer that in any case, use all of the evidence to make your judgment. And that's what they did. They made their judgment based on known facts, based on things that they could measure, smell, taste, feel, and touch. This is what jurors need to do. So often prosecutors and judges try and limit what the jurors' ears can hear, though. See, in Colorado, when they passed their medical marijuana laws, and judges started having to let patients in to present what you would call an affirmative defense, whether it was implicitly allowed or not, jurors picked up on this signal and stopped providing marijuana convictions to police and prosecutors in almost all cases. This is what eventually led to Colorado leading the way to the legalization market, putting forth the first model of legalized cannabis in the country that isn't being shut down and systematically closed by the federal government, because it took into play common sense ideals and principles. Let's not drive while high. Let's make sure, let's not be impaired and drive. Let's make sure that we tightly regulate this so kids aren't getting increased access to marijuana. That's worked. Perceptions among teens are lowered about marijuana. They view some of the people that use marijuana with less, esteem than they would view somebody who doesn't. It's just a crazy notion to think that there's still going to be some mechanisms and gears in place even after the marketplace has been legalized. They still exist after alcohol, do they not? Running out of time here, I don't want to miss the opportunity to play you this commercial because it's only a little 30-second commercial. Ready to go now. Here we go. Is it this? Oh, tell me I've lost it now. I might have. Jeez, I'll be mad. Oh, when is it going to stop? Make it stop. Please make it stop. Okay, where are we at here? I cannot find this commercial now. It worked in rehearsal, folks. Breathalyzer under development. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Check out the new ad. I'll just play it for you. You can listen for yourself.
I'm guilty of trying to control my muscle spasms and manage my pain.
I'm guilty of trying to get my appetite back after going through chemo.
I'm guilty of trying to subdue my daughter's epilepsy.
I am guilty of treating my pain.
I'm guilty of treating my migraines.
I am guilty of treating my Alzheimer's.
I'm guilty.
I'm guilty.
I am guilty.
Medical marijuana isn't criminal. It's time for Missouri to join 23 other states and reform medical marijuana laws. Donate now.
Oh, see, now that's how you do it. Look, if you're going to get stuff done politically, you've got to reach hearts and minds, and the only way you can really effectively do that is to get into their televisions, get into their radios, get into their smartphones and their mobile devices, and hit them with an emotional message. And nowadays, people are very skilled at putting together a short package of information that infers that point. And there it is. I'm just going to play it one more time because it's really worth playing again. This is for medical marijuana in, it's from showmecannabis.com. There we go. One more time.
I'm guilty of trying to control my muscle spasms and manage my pain.
I'm guilty of trying to get my appetite back after going through chemo.
I'm guilty of trying to subdue my daughter's epilepsy.
I am guilty of treating my pain.
I'm guilty of treating my migraines.
I am guilty of treating my Alzheimer's.
I'm guilty.
I am guilty.
Medical marijuana isn't criminal. It's time for Missouri to join 23 other states and reform medical marijuana laws.
Guilty.
Donate now.
I say you're guilty. You're guilty. I am guilty. I am definitely guilty about being up against the clock. Let me just tell you that I wanted to give you one more reminder. I think I made one short announcement before, but I'm going to spill the beans again here now, even though we're going to announce this in a press conference sometime later on this month, in the next week or so. Actually, it'll probably be within the next 2 weeks. I can tell you when the press conference will be. It's going to be December 12th. as we kick off a live marathon broadcast for 8 days and nights. 24 hours a day for 8 days, a week and a day, in an effort to gather marijuana petition signatures to legalize cannabis in Michigan in 2016. It's going to be a media event. It is going to be an endless process, and it is going to be something that I'm going to have a number of people helping me with. The efforts are underway now to make all this happen. We're going to be in 4 cities, in Detroit, Ann Arbor, Lansing, and Flint. And we're going to collect hopefully 5,000 signatures for MI Legalize, just ourselves, and offer incentives for other people to fill out sheets while we're in your city. Come and get a sheet. Have your registered voter friends and family sign the petition, bring it back, and you can reach into a fishbowl for a potential prize. We're going to get cannabis legalized in Michigan in 2016, and this is our last holdout effort to get it done.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.